So in this next one, we're going to walk in and start looking for specific formulas where we can use quickly the square root in order to solve. The formula or the format that we're looking for is this x squared equals k format. So as soon as we recognize this in one of our equations, we'll know that we can use it to solve using square roots. So for an example, we might see something like 3x squared minus 75 equals 0. And when we see something in that format, we need to be able to look at it and realize that we could manipulate the x squared to make it so that it was isolated by itself and all of these other pieces were on the other side of the equation. So in order to do that, we're going to go back to our handy dandy algebra skills. So first I need to get the x squared by itself. The first piece that's in the way is this 75. To make it go away, I use my inverse operations. So I'm going to add 75, and then I know my brother and sister rule tells me whenever I add to one side, I need to add to the other. So that gives me now 3x squared. My 75s are going to cancel out to 0, and then it's going to be equal to 0 plus 75, which is just 75. Next on the list, I need to get the x squared again by itself, so I'm going to need to use inverse operations and divide by 3. Brother and sister rule says whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other, and I'm left now with just x squared equals 75 divided by 3, which is 25. Now the last step that I have in this process is to get rid of that or cancel out that x squared. Now many students will make a mistake on this very step. In order to cancel out the x squared, we know that I need to use a square root. When I square root one side, I need to square root the other. So I'm left with x, and then the square root of 25 is 5. However, I can't tell you how many times students forget that negative 5 will also give them the answer of 25, because negative 5 times negative 5 is 25. So in this case, our answers are both 5 and negative 5, and we can shorten and write that like that. So that means the roots or the crossing points for this quadratic equation will be at 5 and negative 5. Okay guys, this is a nice little silent solve. I want you to pause your video at this place and go through and see if you can solve these two equations on your own. Go ahead, pause it. I'll wait. Okay, that should have been long enough now. I'm going to go through and solve both of these and kind of talk our way through where we should be. I'm going to start on the far side over here. I need to realize that I could get this d squared by itself. I don't have a d term in this one, so I can go ahead and just isolate the d squared. In order to do that, my first step is to subtract 16 from both sides. Again, that brother and sister rule, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So I'm left now with 4d squared equals, these 16's canceled out, and so did those. So I'm left with equals 0. Now I'm going to go through to get rid of the 4. I need to do my inverse operation, so I need to divide both sides by 4. Once I do that, the 4's will cancel out, and everyone knows 0 divided by 4 will still give you 0. Then next, with my d, to get rid of or cancel out the square, I'm going to use the square root. Whatever I square root on one side, I have to square root on the other. These will cancel out, and my d is left here with positive negative 0. But we all know positive and negative 0 are the same, so my d is just 0. Okay, on this problem over here, we're left with a little simple, straightforward. I'm going to use something I like to call the silent solve. I'm just going to walk myself through it and see if your answer comes up the same. So in this equation, my two roots, or my two zeros, should have come up with 6 and negative 6. Okay, moving on now to our last section. We're going to go ahead and have you guys take a look at this math joke. And then as soon as you're finished with that, you can go in and either work on your practice problems on the worksheets, or you can go in and do the practice problems in the book.